Welcome to the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast. I'm your host, Donald Grothoff, along with my wife, Gina. Our goal is to give voice to the hidden mind of obsessive-compulsive disorder, better known as OCD. We would love to have your comments or to have you as a guest, or if you wish to tell your OCD or anxiety story, please visit invisiblewheelchair.com. Now, a quick word about our sponsor.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Q Sciences. Don and I discovered that the supplements we were taking and giving to our children were not being absorbed properly. I was very excited when I found Q Sciences. I was impressed with the quality of the products and that they provide maximum absorption. They have a variety of products, including a Q Max product, which is a combination of 3 products, including vitamins, minerals, and a probiotic. They also have hemp oil, a vitamin B12 spray, a sleep spray, and kids products. I've really seen a difference in how these products are improving how I feel, improving my mental health, and I'm happy with the quality of these products and how they're helping our whole family. If you'd like to learn more,
simply go to qsciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's the letter Q, sciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com, or visit invisiblewheelchair.com and find out more information there.
and stop throwing your money away on supplements that don't work and use a quality product like Q Sciences.
And now, on to the podcast. This is podcast number 59, recorded July 7th, 2021. So today on the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Recently, I did a kind of my own interview of myself, talking about how things were for me going through the OCD we've been going through with my daughters. And today I wanted to interview my wife, Gina, to kind of get her side of it, what it was like for her when we went through this, especially the first time we went through it. So today we're just talking about this with Gina. So thank you for being part of this and welcome.
I'm happy to be here and to share things we've been through, if only to help one other person out there.
We talk about this, we go through a lot our story and all.
Right.
But, we really don't, I don't think, talk about what it was for us inside, internally.
Right.
And that's kind of where I want, what your feelings were when...
And when you asked me about doing this, I'm like, wow, yeah, we are so used to telling our story. We describe this story almost like it's a fictional story in some ways.
I wish it was a once upon a time. Came to a happy ending.
Yeah, not a very happy once upon a time. So trying to think back to what it was like at that time, early on, she had OCD from at least age 8. So that is 11 years ago.
Yeah.
I feel like I was in a very different place 11 years ago. Since that time, I've suffered through a lot of depression myself. When I try to think back to those first years, it feels like it was a different person. I feel so changed by not only that situation, but other things in our life that have happened since then. So in thinking about it, I've been writing for, a long time. And I've written some blogs about what things were like, and I found this one that I wrote sometime in 2013. So that would have been... Abby would have been about 11 at the time. And so I wrote just a day in the life of a family member with OCD. In this blog, I'm just describing what my day was like.
And now, reading from her blog.
I woke up this morning, and my little one was still asleep. I checked my phone and saw my husband's text, left at 6:50, and she was still sleeping. I stayed put, checking email and Facebook on my phone until my youngest woke up at 9:30. We then headed downstairs to check on Abby, who was asleep on the couch. She was awake and said she had been up for a while, but was curled up and calm. Thank God. I went in the kitchen and got her supplements and a new glass of water and a fresh straw. I brought them to her, gave her the supplements one at a time, dropping them into her mouth and waiting for her to reach her body across the table where her cup sat and drink from her straw. I then started breakfast. I heated up pancakes for the kids, and I started some hot water. I got pancakes ready for my 4-year-old. She wanted a special cup for her juice, and so I told her to go get it out, which one she wanted. I then started sausages and brought my daughter's plate of pancakes with syrup and cut and the box of spoons to her into the living room where she was sitting watching TV. I set down her plate and opened a box of plastic spoons, moving the lid out of the way for her to reach in and take one. I pointed out how many spoons were left and reminded her that we will not be buying another box of plastic spoons. I went back to the kitchen and started my breakfast. I cut up an apple and quinoa and I got it cooking on the stove and used hot water to make myself tea. Lexi was done eating now, and so I got her vitamins out. The sausage was done and my daughter was now in the bathroom. I called up to her. She said she was too full for the sausage. I put them away in a container and labeled it Abby. And then I put some others sausages that she didn't like that Lexi and I would eat. She called me upstairs to help her wash her hands. I pumped soap into her hands and then turned on the faucet, waited for her to finish, and then turned the faucet off for her and went back downstairs to the kitchen to finish making my breakfast. Lexi managed to play by herself, and things were relatively calm. It's easier when only 2 of my kids are home. My youngest had spent the night at a friend's house, and my husband had an all-day workshop and wouldn't get home until after 6 p.m. I managed to eat and make a batch of nettles. I soaked dried nettle leaves in hot water to make an infusion, which we then let cool and freeze into ice cube trays and make smoothies. Nettles are full of great nutrients. Keep in mind that my 4-year-old talks almost continuously and comes in frequently to tell me or show me something or requests for me to come see what she's doing. Abby and Lexi managed to play together briefly, but it ended because Abby had made too many rules and Lexi had come to me crying. She desperately misses playing with her sister, but it's not easy for her to play with her because she cannot touch her spot on the couch, and she does make a lot of rules when they play. Abby tried to negotiate with her, asking her which rules she didn't like, but Lexi was done. By now it was 10 a.m., and so I reminded Abby that she was supposed to be Skyping with her cousin at noon. Her cousin lives in Pennsylvania, and about 2 times a week they chat on Skype, or they're working on a story together and building a house for their imaginary family on Google Autodesk Homestyler. I ask her if she has a towel to use after she showers and clothes to wear. I go to the kitchen to finish cleaning up, unloading the dishwasher. She finally decides she needs to wash clothes and her towel as well as her sheets. She goes upstairs to get her clothes and comes down. "Mom, I need you to open the washer." "Just a minute." And then I head down and open the washer. She drops clothes in and I tell her to get more. And then I start the washer and add soap. She brings a few more items down and her towel, but tells me she can only wash the clothes that she is going to wear today. And I tell her she needs to wash more because I cannot wash clothes for her for every single day. She gets mad and huffs off.
Now back to the interview.
So I read this blog and it's written in a very matter-of-fact way, yet there's a lot of emotion that goes behind that. And as I'm reading it, I'm recalling just the mundaneness of the tasks and the ridiculousness of some of the activities that we had to do. This was at her worst time when she wouldn't touch anything that we had touched, and the only way she would eat was with a brand new plastic utensil at every meal. We didn't want her to not eat anymore. I was worried about eating disorders that can go hand in hand with OCD and depression. And so we were doing everything to compensate so that she could eat. And yet I guess we had started working on reducing those compensations, thus this is your last box of plastic spoons. And, and the straws too. She would pull out one straw and she wouldn't touch the glass. She literally leaned over the table to sip from the straw. And so reading that, it's...
Can you touch the feelings that you had in that?
It just feels heavy. And just thinking about what her younger sister was going through and knowing how her younger sister's been suffering with OCD as well, that this was kind of our normal, the way we were living. And just the time I would spend going up to help her in the bathroom. And then, she had a phone call in 2 hours, so she had to start showering now, knowing that shower
it could take a while.
Likely was going to take a good hour, if not longer. And this was, I think, a calmer time. This was
calmer, it wasn't.
This was after we had things in place of what we were working towards and making progress. I don't have the exact date. I wish I did.
But that sounds roughly about that time, somewhere around there. One of the things I remember is that, we couldn't really leave her alone. We had to one of us always had to be there, so... And
she wouldn't go anywhere with us. There was a time when she wouldn't get in the car. Yeah. That felt like a really long period of time.
How did you see that affecting what you had to do and had to be and go to activities or whatever did?
Well, we stopped going places, and for her 4-year-old sister, I realized that wasn't helpful to her, that our life kind of shut down. Her older brother got to go and do things with other people. People picked him up to take him places. Our life was kind of frozen in this weird reality where fear took over everything, and washing and cleaning sheets and towels and clothes. I forgot she had to wash the towel each time she showered. And
what about the fear for you?
I'm not sure. I don't know. When I think back to it, it's really hard to get into the feeling, other than that it just felt like it was never going to end.
Yeah.
Not knowing what the future would look like. Kind of just trying to get through each day.
Survival, in other words.
Really. Yeah. And, I had this younger child to take care of, and this...
Almost kind of like you, I don't know if this is the right word, but kind of like numbed yourself out of really taking it in, the memories of it? Or?
Well, yeah, I know that more recently that's been sort of my coping strategy, not the best coping strategy, sort of my depression looks like tuning out, numbing, just getting through it. At this point, it wasn't the initial onset of her OCD. It was a couple years later when things flared and got worse. I know I was hopeful. I was tired.
Yeah, exhaustion.
It took all my energy to take care of her and the young one, and also work part-time. It just, I don't know, it feels like an emptiness there to try to harness what it was like.
For myself, I remember I felt like I always had to justify to friends or family about why we couldn't do this or why we didn't go here. Or do you have any of that? Like, how did it affect your relationship with your friends or family and things?
I'm blanking. I guess at that time I felt alone. I can't recall reaching out to any friends. I can't.
It almost seemed to scatter in a way, and not maybe that's not the best way to describe it.
She had stopped going to dance because of her OCD when she was 11. She couldn't go to Girl Scouts. It was probably almost 6 months.
Well, we couldn't even get her to the therapist either.
We weren't going anywhere. We had a goal. Her cousins were coming down and they were going to go to kids camp at my sister's place. And so that motivated her to want to get better, and we did have a plan. We worked with the therapist who came to the house and got her back to her therapist. I remember maybe this was one of our first trips out of the house, and we went to meet my parents were in town because they were still living down at the lake, and we met them. I think she maybe had a therapist or a psychiatrist appointment, and then we met them for lunch. And she had to bring her own utensils inside, and she couldn't sit down. I had to put something on the seat so that she could sit down. I remember feeling the need to compensate for everything when we were out. I just wanted to keep things calm. I just wanted to prevent a flare-up. So just giving in to all the OCD demands so that we could get through this. And wondering, why can't we just go out to eat? Most kids would be excited to get to go out to eat. And here we were struggling with silverware and being able to sit down.
When we first got into it, was it tough to kind of accept the OCD, accept that it was happening and that it was that?
I remember when we realized that's what it was. I didn't want to label her. I wanted, let's get some help for her. Let's not label what this is. Let's change her diet. Let's try these different things. It's hard to accept that your child is suffering from an illness, especially a mental illness. I had a large period of time when I would go back and watch videos of when the kids were younger and the older two just giggling and laughing and playing together. And now we had this angry, hateful child, this child who was the easy, carefree child, other than her colic she had for her first 3 months of life, where she would just cry and not sleep.
That was an indication.
She was easygoing, and I can picture her walking. There were toys scattered around the floor, and she just walked over the top of them, not bothered that they were there, just going with the flow wherever we went. I mean, I don't remember having to give her 5-minute timers like I had with our oldest when we were leaving in preparation. She was more just went with the flow of things, and yet then things got turned upside down and everything became so rigid and full of rules. And I always try to imagine what it's like for her, what it's like for both of our daughters, and what's going on in their mind is struggling with this.
Did it break your heart?
Yeah. It's feeling like she lost her childhood, she lost her innocence, and even to this day those memories are very vague for her. She doesn't have many memories from this whole chunk of her life, several years of it.
It might be good for parts of it anyway, to not have to remember it. But,
and yet to me it's sad. Yeah, I think there's part of me that's kind of closed off those emotions because it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with. It's a lot to think about. And right now we're going through a struggle with our youngest, and that's been tough. Because it's like, okay, we learned a lesson. We knew we need to get help early. We need to do these things. And yet here we are
doing it all
struggling
over again.
And trying to find a therapist for our youngest. And people keep turning us down. And it's like, we're going to pay cash to take her to an OCD specialist. And people are telling us no.
Yeah.
So I guess the heaviness is it's not over. We're still in the middle of it with the second child.
Any advice you'd want to give a mom who's starting out in that place?
Reach out to friends, take help, and keep at it. Keep looking. If you don't like the doctor, look for another one. Keep looking for resources. Find a support group of other parents whose kids have OCD. I can't remember when I found the online support group. It was helpful to hear these other stories and go, wow, that sounds like my kid. That sounds like what we're going through. To feel not so alone. And
I think we learned too later on that we wish we would have known it, about taking care of ourselves.
Yeah, and I always thought I was taking care of myself, but somewhere along the way that fell apart, I suppose, and it looked like I was taking care of myself, yet
it's a lot of times it's more than just taking care of the outer part of yourself. It's the inner part that we don't think about.
Yeah, and I would still go and have some time to myself, yet
if I remember right, there was many times you'd do that and you'd get the phone call from her.
Yeah, screaming, demanding I come home. So there was no escaping it. There was no giving away. It was constant. And just the anger in the small child, bitterness, the unhappiness. I remember her being so miserable and talking with the therapist even about how her brain was just so caught in the loop of fears that we had to find for opportunities for her to enjoy and take pleasure in life. Connecting with her cousins was one thing she really looked forward to.
Her dog.
And her dog. And I know for a while, when she couldn't touch anything, I was on the computer for her, helping her do things so that she could have that connection with her cousins. I didn't want to cutting her off from the world. I wanted her engaging in something that she enjoyed, to her day not to just be filled with these irrational fears and compulsions, or numbing out with endless episodes of the Golden Girls and Frasier.
Well, and I think too, we didn't want to make it all about like punishment or about having to, we wanted to give her breaks from that too.
Didn't want to take away the things that mattered to her, that helped her feel like a person, that helped her, the things that she enjoyed. It was a difficult balancing act of limiting our giving in to the compulsions, our accommodating. Because the more we did that, the more it fuels the OCD that I have to wash one day's clothes at a time and my sheets and take this hour shower. Or is always so vague, or it has been for her. It was, my voice keeps cracking up doing this, and I think that's a reflection of being able to speak about this and really find
for yourself,
what it was like for me. I was just a mom doing what I had to do, and our youngest needed so much of my time, demanded a lot of time.
Well, and she demanded, Abby, the first one, demanded our time too, and took it. It wasn't a choice really.
Right, so my time was spent, it's like when I woke up early in the morning and Lexi was still asleep next to me, it's kind of like have a little quiet on my phone and look on Facebook and maybe play a game and just have that peace for however long until the first one woke up. And what I really remember is Abby resisting sleep, not wanting to sleep, not going to sleep. She finally would pass out. And we just, her waking up was like this fear of, was she going to wake up as angry as when she fell asleep?
Screaming, yelling.
This particular day that I wrote about was a calm day. It was just the insanity of how much time it took to do things, the preparing the food, just those procedures, those rituals of...
Well, I haven't used tongs to pick the bread up and put it in the toaster so you wouldn't touch it.
I don't even know how she got her clothes into the washer. I'm not really sure how that happened. I know I had to open the washer for her to put the things in there.
Then she'd have to go up and wash her hands.
After she put them in.
Put the clothes in. So it was this constant washing.
There was, Our youngest has engaged much more in the long hand washing, whereas she was repetitive with... It's a lot, and I think it feels heavy because we're still going through it. And so there's this part of me that's got relief that our older daughter is now functioning and got her license and is living away for the summer, and she's doing all these things, yet we're still here, stuck with this.
Some of the same kind of stuff, just not in the same intensity as it was the first time.
Well, and it's different because, like, for the summer, it's just her in the house.
Yeah.
And when Abby's here, too, they're 7 years apart, and there's just a lot of tension there and a lot of bickering, and there's small moments where they're laughing and joking and goofing around together, and I really savor those times and wish there was more of them. I look back at pictures of when the youngest was really young and just them hanging out together, all three of them, and it feels lost. It feels, I guess I wonder where we went wrong. How are we going through this again? How are we...
we always tend to put it on ourselves, which is...
Yeah, you feel responsible.
Yeah.
You're the parent, and you're supposed to get help for your child and get them the resources they need, and yet it's not easy.
Yeah.
You have a doctor who tells you it's your fault, it's the way you parent.
Yeah.
You have misinformation.
That makes you angry. That,
Yeah, and
at
you know,
yourself and that...
and why does this happen to your kids? Why do they have to go through this? I don't know if I was stronger when Abby was going through it. I had much more of a... I don't think I was quite dealing with the depression that I've been dealing with the past, I don't know how many years.
A long time, yeah.
Too many years. And so I had more energy into it, but I also had more exhaustion from it. I'm more removed now in a good way and a not so good way.
Yeah.
I'm realizing that this is where things are at, and somehow they'll get better. I have a little bit of that perspective.
Yeah, back then it was hard to find that it'll get better
perspective. It was just getting through the day and just, oh my God, thank God we're all asleep now, and oh my God, we got to wake up and do this again.
You'd look. I always looked at the watch at 9 o'clock. Today we did really good, but can we make it to the bed?
And I don't know that I looked. I know that it felt. I don't know. You just do it, and when you have really young kids, there's just a lot to do.
Yeah.
There's a lot they need. I mean, our youngest just constantly wanted to show you things. She wouldn't go off and play on her own very much. It was wanted your time and your attention. And
so really it's kind of maybe we were distracted by the busyness of life, that you didn't think about it as much or let it soak in as much as we do now. We're not as busy, so it kind of, we can feel it more.
Yeah, and I think years of that, along with other things, just that another day.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing your feelings like this, because I think it's important for other people to know what it feels like, not just know what it's like to go through it,
and it's
but to really know the feelings behind it. And
that's the challenge. I know the EFT work I've done recently with Ruthie, it's an EFT practitioner that I've worked with. She's had to ask me repeatedly, what are you feeling? Because I get into my head and I analyze it and I describe it, and it's like, what am I feeling? It's like, that's when I realized that my depression really looks like the lack of feelings for me. It doesn't look like sadness. It really looks like disengaging from feelings. And so it's a lot. It's a lot to think about, but it's important to stop and pay attention to your feelings. Write it down. Do whatever, find a way to channel it and just sit with it to realize what you are feeling, to acknowledge it. And as always, seek out the resources. I'm sure you've got them listed, the OCD Foundation.
Yeah, they're all
finding qualified therapists, reading some things, reading inspirational things, something that has nothing to do with OCD, disappearing in a novel.
Yeah.
Taking some time to be apart from it,
well, again, thanks for taking time to share with me.
Sure, it's good to stop and reflect sometimes, and sharing our story. That's what we do to help other people. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes this podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Remember that we love comments. We also would love for you to be our guest or to tell your story. Simply go to invisiblewheelchair.com. Gina and I want you to know that there is hope for those who suffer with OCD and that it is manageable. And we are here to help you and your family. To find out more about our practice and what we can do for you, go to FocusHealthyFamily.com. Opinions and ideas expressed here are not necessarily those of Focus Healthy Family, Family OCD, Invisible Wheelchair Podcast, or the Grothoffs. Thank you for listening. Keep tapping and focusing forward in your journey.